And people say to me, what happens after Donald Trump when he dies? Maybe this thing will end. These things don't end. They don't just go away. And the people who are getting tired of MAGA, whether it's through Epstein or the economic stuff, where are they going to go, Waj? Are they just going to say, you know what, I'm done with politics?
We are talking about how the Groypers have taken over the GOP. And specifically the title of this is Nick Fuentes, the neo-Nazis and the Groypers have taken over the GOP. But honestly, it could have just said Groypers. But not everyone knows what Groypers are. Like, I've heard of this. I've heard of Groypers, Nick Fuentes. Why is this in the news? And so I thought the timing of everything was so perfect. I had asked Jared to join me earlier in this week, and then the heavens parted and gave us the most rancid candy in the form of Tucker Carlson, now uniting with Nick Fuentes, and Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation, which is the right-wing conservative think tank, which is the, if you will, institutional intellectual plank of MAGA that produced Project 2025. The leader of that group, the stalwart of modern MAGA conservatism, came out yesterday in a video and told the world, we do not renounce Tucker Carlson. Furthermore, he said, we are open to listening to Nick Fuentes and debating these ideas. And Nick Fuentes, and I say this without any exaggeration or hyperbole, is a neo-Nazi. Nick Fuentes said Hitler was cool. Nick Fuentes said Hitler was based. Nick Fuentes loves his Stalin. Nick Fuentes is a Holocaust denier and made Holocaust jokes. Nick Fuentes, when ADL was a respectable, somewhat respectable organization, did an entire explainer on Nick Fuentes and his anti-Semitism. But shockingly, Jared, have you noticed? Not a peep by the ADL right now when it comes to Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and Kevin Roberts. Not a peep. So we are here talking about, and I'm saying it, the Groypers have taken over the GOP. Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene are the present and future of the conservative movement in America. But I yield the floor to Jared. Please disagree with me if I'm wrong.
I am so glad that this is where we're starting, Waj, because I've been following this for a while now. And I want to start by explaining it to people like this. There is a bias of the moment in the United States of America. People look at our political situation as if it's always going to be the way it is today, and that it will not progress, or it will not decline, or it will not escalate. MAGA, in the very beginning, played footsie with the white nationalist and the alt-right, all of that, and welcomed their support.
Yes.
And the way that it worked was that Donald Trump, and here's the wild thing that I don't think a lot of people have wrapped their heads around. Donald Trump in 2016 was to the far left and far right of both of the parties simultaneously. He straddled both. And, I've had a lot of experience researching neo-Nazism and extremism and crypto-Nazism. And the way that they get you in, Waj, is they start with a nugget of truth. They're like, you've been betrayed. Absolutely, we've been betrayed. We've been betrayed repeatedly. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, guess who did it? Right? And instead of going after the wealthy, instead of going after the wealth and oligarchical classes and basically the people who rule this country, they immediately take it over to the Jews. And the way that this has worked, and Tucker Carlson, who is the ultimate opportunist, I don't know, have you ever been on a panel with Tucker? I assume you've been in the media long enough.
He invited me on his show one time when he had a Fox News show. And thankfully, at the last second, they said no.
Well, and by the way, I was wondering as you were telling that story whether it was CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, because people who don't know, he has worked for all three. He has been a bow tie wearing conservative. He's been a neoconservative. Now he's a Groyper, white replacement theory guy. And basically what we're looking at right now is that MAGA promised to take care of the problems and played footsie with the white nationalist and the neo-Nazis and the crypto-Nazis. Guess what, Waj? They're not taking care of any of those problems. They're only making them worse because it is it's a fascist grift. That's the entire point. And people say to me, what happens after Donald Trump when he dies? Maybe this thing will end. These things don't end. They don't just go away. And the people who are getting tired of MAGA, whether it's through Epstein or the economic stuff or whatever, or even the fact that the vice president of the United States of America is married to a woman of another ethnicity, like those people, where are they going to go, Waj? Are they just going to say, you know what, I'm done with politics? No, they have been fed a constant stream of neo and crypto Nazi propaganda, which means that when they grow tired of MAGA and Donald Trump, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the Nazis. And so it isn't a shock that now, when we're not even done with the first year of the second Trump presidency, that all of a sudden Nick Fuentes is being platformed. It's not wild that he's going on Tucker. And by the way, for anybody who didn't do it, I watched that entire conversation.
I'm sorry, but well done.
It was the normalization of crypto Nazi politics. What a nice young man who, I don't know why people are all upset about this. I don't, like, you're just talking about what's good for America or whatever. That literally has taken him and sane washed and normalized Nick Fuentes and crypto Nazism, which is what the GOP has been doing for decades now.
Yep.
It just so happens that they have figured out the next conduit. And who's it important for, Waj? Young white men who have been absolutely marinating and stewing in this for years. They've been inundated with it. Now I don't know when the last time you looked at Twitter was. I go there all the time for research purposes. It is a neo-Nazi manufacturing machine.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden we have this anti-Semitic sort of like conspiracy theory stuff, which twists it in a way that Nazis have always done, fascists have always done. It has brought people to the precipice of saying MAGA isn't even extreme enough. We now need the next thing. And I keep saying, if we're not careful, we're going to look back at the Trump years and say, oh my God, we didn't know like that it could get worse. Because now we're literally moving into, and all of the money, all the financial, all the economic, all of the political incentives are now moving in the direction of literal outright Nazism. And it couldn't be a bigger story that people really aren't wrapping their heads around.
And folks, I want to remind you all that Lee Atwater, the infamous Republican strategist in 1980, said, we can no longer use the N-word when it comes to the Southern strategy. So we have to come up with a benign way of saying the same old racist culture war stuff to divide white workers from workers of color. So instead of saying the N-word, 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 now we talk about welfare queens and we talk about busing. And so that was what Jared described as the Republican Party playing footsie with these groups forever, especially with the advance of the civil rights movement, where Lyndon B. Johnson, he was a white from the South. He knew. He goes, we've lost white Southerners for generations. He knew it. He goes, this is the political risk we have to take. The moment is now. We can no longer ignore it. So we got to go all in with the civil rights movement. But we've lost white Southerners. He said it. And the Southern strategy then was put on steroids by Nixon. It was then cultivated by Reagan. Then you brought in the white Christian nationalist agenda, more so with George W. Bush. And now you have it all together. You have white Christian nationalism with white supremacy, with the techno-fascism all merged together. And what I've always said is the underlying, the underpin of all these groups has always been white supremacy. White supremacy, power, money. White supremacy, power, money. There's always a grift angle. They always want power. And the Russell Vaughts and the Stephen Millers and the Peter Thiels, what? They don't agree on everything. What do they agree on? White supremacy and eugenics. Okay. White Christian nationalism. Nick Fuentes, folks, Jared said, you know, they think MAGA's milquetoast. Absolutely correct. Now, for those who don't know, I did this really quick connect the dots with Danielle. For those who are watching Democracy Age, we want to go in more depth. Nick Fuentes is this young white dude who's an edgelord incel who spends a lot of time online and social media. Not anyone can have a show. So he decides to create this show on social media where he shitposts. Everything is a joke, or when it isn't. America first to him means a white Christian nationalist state. And he and his army of Groypers came into, if you will, popularity by trolling, not liberals, conservatives. They got into popularity by trolling Charlie Kirk, who was racist, misogynist, xenophobic, and Islamophobic. And they thought Charlie Kirk was a sellout. They thought he was an establishment sellout to Israel. an establishment sellout to the oligarchy, an establishment sellout to the mainstream right wing, and he wasn't hardcore or right wing enough. So what they did at Turning Point, functions at colleges, and they used to line up and troll him and try to get him further and further and further to the right to meet them where they are, which is the neo-Nazi space. Who do they also troll? Ben Shapiro.
Shapiro.
Nick Fuentes hates Ben Shapiro. And he's like, here you are wearing a yarmulke and you're Jewish and you're Israeli first. F you. What are you talking about? You're not America first, you're Israel first. It was so bad that Ben Shapiro, who's openly practicing proud Jew, married, has kids, when they were at some event, I remember I just telling Danielle this, the only time I've ever publicly defended Ben Shapiro is that these Groypers surrounded Ben Shapiro as in like his kid was like a baby. They were in a stroller and they were just harassing him and his wife and the kid. And I was like, all right, I hate Ben Shapiro and I hate friggin' Nazis that they make me defend Ben Shapiro, but this is a step too far. Okay, now, this is me being petty. I tried my best even now I try, for 14 years, to tell a lot of my Jewish American friends, the ones who are Zionist or conservative, who completely marinating themselves in Islamophobia or dip their toes in Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian rhetoric, right? Liberal on everything except Palestine. Your alliance with the right wing, your alliance with Donald Trump, your alliance with the conservative movement, it's going to backlash. Yeah, you're aligning with them for Israel, but the line I use, and I'll say again, is they might love Israel. Jews, not so much. And they love Israel because white Christian nationalists believe that Jews must control Jerusalem as a necessary precondition for Jesus to come back, and the first group that Jesus will kill is the Jews. But the Jewish groups that I talked to, the right wing, the Zionist groups, conservative groups, said, we don't believe that. Who cares? It's a marriage of convenience. So I said, watch out. Watch out, Jared. I told them because I said, listen, it ain't Trump that I'm worried about. It's about Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nick Fuentes, and the Groypers. And they hate me. I'm Muslim. And they hate me because I'm brown-skinned. But you know who they hate even more than me? The Jews. And did you see Nick Fuentes yesterday in his 7-minute video doing a victory lap saying, Charlie Kirk, I disagree with him. I hated him, but Charlie Kirk was coming towards me. He was coming towards my positions. And Charlie Kirk was against Israel. And Charlie Kirk, one of the releases of the Epstein files. And you know what? This is what Nick Fuentes said. Charlie Kirk would have invited me to Turning Points USA. And then did you see what he said to the Jewish conservative chickens for Colonel Sanders who aligned themselves with Donald Trump, Josh Hammer, I think he called that Josh Hammer, Mark Levin, Laura Loomer. He said, F you, we effing hate you, go back to Israel. I said a lot. Jared.
And by the way, like to break it down, because it gets so weird, Waj, because everybody wants like silver bullets, like this is how the thing is happening, this is how the other thing is happening. Like it literally is a situation where things like AIPAC are a problem. And what the state of Israel is doing under Benjamin Netanyahu is absolutely abhorrent. And do they have influence in American politics that's undue? Absolutely. We shouldn't have politicians that are saying their number one priority is taking care of Israel. That's insane, right?
Yep.
But it's,
that's Ted Cruz.
Yeah, it's not what is it? The Zionist occupied government. That's not what's happening in this country. It is this weird intersection of things. Does Ben Shapiro deserve criticism? Absolutely, he does. Also, by the way, is Ben Shapiro funded by people outside of the country? Yes, he is. It's not necessarily Israel, but it allows, Fuentes to go after him. And for people who don't know, the reason why Fuentes does what he does, the reason why he rages against the Republican Party instead of works for the Heritage Foundation, is because he was rejected by them. And then he went after them. It's been a personal feud. And by the way, if you even listen to 5 minutes of Nick Fuentes, this is all personal animosity that looks exactly like Donald Trump. He is fueled by rejection and made angry by rejection, which is what all fascists and all Nazis do anyway. And so what has happened, Waj, is that the internal contradictions of the Republican Party during fascism, because fascism is not this homogenized thing. Everyone wants to believe everybody's on the same page. No, MAGA is a big, giant contradictory tent. and it is constantly fighting against itself and constantly destroying itself. Nazis and fascists are constantly going to civil war with one another and fighting one another. Nick Fuentes has managed to create a niche for himself, one, because they need neo-Nazism in order to complete this fascist project. Two is because these other people have been so in this weird, there's so much torque. You know what I mean? Like trying to, and Donald Trump can't do it. He can't do it any single day. Like they don't want to go to war, and meanwhile, we're getting ready to invade Venezuela, right? Oh, we're going to go after the deep state and all of the child abusers. Meanwhile, he's a child abuser and has created his own deep state, right? All those internal contradictions, they lead to people, and it's much like drug addiction. People will start a drug, it gets them high, and then they grow a tolerance to it, and they need something more extreme.
Well, you said drugs. I was thinking about porn and how it's like more and more sadistic. They just need more.
They need more
They
and
can't
more.
get it up anymore.
Exactly. And so what has happened, if you think about it through that lens, MAGA is a drug. And MAGA gave them what they wanted, and now they need the next thing. And it's not a coincidence, by the way, that people like Fuentes are becoming so powerful and becoming so influential when the main drivers of right-wing politics are people like Peter Thiel. And I don't know if you've listened to Peter Thiel lately, but who is he into? Carl Schmitt. Like literally one of the leading Nazi ideologues. Thiel is going around the country right now giving lectures that is normalizing Nazism, literal Nazi ideology, through the lens of tech-assisted Christianity. So what is happening in this country? And by the way, J.D. Vance is in on this. Thank God Blake Masters was so repellent that he couldn't get into office. But what has happened is they created a foothold. And the people who are driving Republican politics, who are the tech oligarchs, are not just anti-human. They're not just anti-democratic. They have crypto-Nazi beliefs. And it's also not a coincidence that Elon Musk, who the ADL wrapped their arms around, was walking around constantly spreading anti-Semitic, updated protocols of the Elders of Zion conspiracy theories. And so then you get in a weird place where, and actually, you know what's weird, Waj, and I don't say this very often, Tucker Carlson, in his conversation with Nick Fuentes, said something that was accurate. He said to Nick Fuentes, I happen to think that the ADL actually likes you. And why? Because it allows them to say, look at this anti-Semitism. We need to be able to do this. It creates strange bedfellows. And I want to add an extra thing to what you said in terms of the history. During the 1990s, during the Bill Clinton administration, a centrist president who enacted almost all the leftover legislation that came from Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush in creating neoliberal globalism, the Republican Party decided it was really important for them to start working with so-called patriots. And do you know where that led? To call jackbooted thugs that are coming for your guns and coming for your religion? It led to Timothy McVeigh bombing the Alfred P. Murrah building. They have always played footsie with this. They have always brought those people in their tent. And what happens, Waj, when you bring those people into your tent? It's not like you can isolate them. And one of Tucker's heroes, William Buckley, thought that he could play with the John Birch Society. And you know what happens? They don't just get isolated. They take your party over. They eventually become the main ideological thrust of this. So when people are like, Marjorie Taylor Greene's a Democrat now. No, she's not. She has become the moderate part of the Republican Party, which tells you where the Overton window is. These people have been spreading fascist and Nazi ideology. Eventually, you become fascists and Nazis. And eventually, Donald Trump's not enough. And if you actually pay any attention to the right wing right now, Donald Trump is mid. Donald Trump is a centrist to them. They want something more extreme. They need something more extreme. And all of these algorithms, which are driven by people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of these people, they are slowly and also quickly, they are radicalizing people to not just accept Nazi ideology, but to full-heartedly define themselves by it. And in the conversations I'm having and in the circles that I'm researching, Waj, they've already started with the kernels. You know what I mean? It's the stories, it's the narratives, it's the explanations, which basically puts you on a slippery slope into outright Nazism and fascism.
Yeah, there's this documentary I just saw called From Weimar to War. It's about an hour long. And I'm telling you, folks, the parallels between the Nazi occupation of Germany, the takeover of the politics, the mindset, the people, the institutions, and what's happening with MAGA, it's stunning. The documentary itself doesn't say anything like that, but you watch it, it's unmistakable. And similarly, the German government at the time thought that they could control Hitler.
Yep.
They thought that he would be a pliable puppet. They saw his ascending popularity. They put him in jail. He tried to do his violent insurrection. It was put down. He went to jail. He came out, and then they thought, he's done. He's finished. But then he saw an opening, and he took the economic anxiety of people and he gave them a story. You're being replaced. You're being disrespected. It's the French. And Europe. Look how they mistreated you after World War I. Look at the elites and the establishment. Look how they're getting richer and you're getting poorer. We were once great. I will make you great again. You know whose fault it is? The Jews. You know whose fault it is? The establishment. You know whose fault it is? The communists. And then they manufactured a crisis.
And the gays. Yep.
And the gays. And shouldn't we be pure? Shouldn't we have productive people? What about these cripples? And what about these schizophrenics? And it was not just the gays, but also the people who are seen as weak. Those who had disabilities, those who had mental health issues, they were seen as unpure. Well, folks, what did the Fox News host, not Fox News host, the Morning Friend say, right? All these homeless people, can't we just kill them?
Yep.
And then on CNN, 2 weeks before that, people forgot on Abby Phillips' show, there was a young white woman, a MAGA, who said, can't people with schizophrenia, can't we just gather them all up and send them to jail? Eugenics, who also promotes eugenics, RFK, he wants a registry of people with autism. They're useless. They can't do anything. You're like, what? Elon Musk, empathy is a weakness. Elon Musk, we need productive people, and we need to get rid of non-productive people. Curtis Yarvin, their podunk white trash intellectual, who said, you know what? All these unproductive people, we should make them into like biodiesel and biofuel, like what you saw in The Matrix. I'm not making this up, folks. This is the intellectual that Peter Thiel follows and J.D. Vance follows, right? All Nazi eugenic ideas about racial supremacy and people who are taking things from you and people who are replacing you. And if it wasn't for this group, you'd be great again. And we have to eliminate those people. And there's right and there's wrong. And you are a part of a master race and you are destined by God and by Kismet and by fate to lead the world. And if it wasn't for these people, you could have already ascended, and trust me, I'm your leader. Does that sound familiar?
Well, can I throw a couple of logs on that fire?
Yes.
Because here's the thing, and this is what drives...
No books, Jared.
This is what drives me absolutely insane about this. And by the way, you brought up Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin, for people who don't know, is one of the most influential thinkers on the right now. You know what drives me nuts about this, Wash? He's a plagiarist. Yeah. He doesn't even have his own philosophy.
And he's also stupid, but continue.
Stupid. He basically read a bunch of Wikipedia articles about the ideological drivers of Nazism and then just sort of like reworded them. I wouldn't be shocked if he used AI to do it. Basically, what has happened at this point, I'll throw a couple of these things. The Nazis said that the people in the cities, Waj, that they were decadent and degenerate. They had AIDS, they had trans people, they had betrayed the country, and that they needed to be brought to bear. Do you know who actually mattered in that time period? The Volk, which are the rural people, the people who held on to their traditions as white Nazis, white Germans, right? We look at Bavaria and say, oh my God, look at how they've kept their traditions alive. We need to clear out these cities of their degeneracy and their decadence and make them better. That, by the way, is one of the reasons why, and by the way, weirdly enough, throw in a sprinkle of Mao in there, that we need to go into the cities, drive them out, and drive them into the rural areas, and you've suddenly got MAGA. Then, all of a sudden, you start thinking about what's going on in this country, because what is fascism? It's a theft of the people's wealth and resources for the powerful. Who was it that put Hitler in power? It wasn't just like the politicians who wanted to control him. It was the... And what did he say to them? Democracy and capitalism are incompatible. And by the way, tell me I'm crazy. I hear Peter Thiel and everybody else say this constantly. It is plagiarism. And what's even more insulting, Waj, The people who are spouting this don't even understand what was happening. They've just been fed this. They're intellectually incurious and stupid, and they have basically gotten into a script that looks exactly like all of this. And you talk about eugenics. We haven't gotten to straight eugenics yet. We've gotten to soft eugenics. We're going to get rid of medical programs. We're going to get rid of science. We're going to get rid of healthcare. We're going to get rid of all of this stuff. But I will tell you right now, as somebody who's been screaming about all this since 2016, and you have as well, we saw where this was going. Eventually, at some point, when the resources run out, like, I don't know, SNAP benefits, and people are going to be left to starve and not figure out what they're doing. Eventually, Wash, we're going to end up with a bunch of people who don't have anything. And eventually, if there's, I don't know, a war, whether it's with Venezuela or Russia or China, or whether it's just climate collapse, they're going to come up with solutions about what to do with useless eaters. People just need that and don't put anything in. And by the way, they're collapsing the economy. They're getting rid of a bunch of jobs. They're going to lay off basically every white-collar worker in the country. That sounds to me like a lot of useless eaters, Waj. And we're already putting immigrants, which is the vulnerable scapegoat class, into concentration camps. God knows how many of them have died. It started out with those people who are at the margins, whether it was gay and trans people, whether it was disabled people, whether it was, Roma people, whatever it was. It starts there and then it moves to the next step. And what we're talking about is not conjecture. It is an obvious escalation of the direction that we're already going. They don't understand it. They are simply acting on fascistic instincts. People like Fuentes understand it. Yarvin, I think, at times understands it, but doesn't really, have a lot of oomph for it. There are very serious people who are carrying these things out, and then there are others who are simply cosplaying as fascists and Nazis. And here's the thing, Waz, you wear a costume for long enough, it's not your costume anymore. It's just who you are.
It's exactly who you are, and that's a really good point, especially on Halloween. A trick or treat, you might be the ghoul that you think you're cosplaying as. And folks, just trust the evidence of your eyes and ears. I keep saying this: trust the evidence of your eyes and your ears. On the top of my head, I'm going to give you some evidence, and then you come up to your own conclusion. The year is 2025. It's Halloween. It's October 31st. Jared and I are hyperbolic. We suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. We're just these cosmopolitan lefties, even though Jared's in the Midwest. And, I'm a flaming leftist, socialist, godless heathen, even though I'm a practicing Muslim, married to one woman who drives a minivan and has 3 kids. But I digress. The Department of Homeland Security on October 14th, its main Twitter handle literally tweets, "Remigrate." Remigrate is a word only used in white nationalist spaces that means ethnic cleansing. They haven't done a follow-up. They haven't apologized. That tweet is still up. Donald Trump has quoted Hitler several times. He said that these immigrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of America. He said we have to get rid of the enemy from within. He's also talked about having people from good genes. He's also talked about having people come from countries that aren't shithole countries. General Kelly said in the first Trump administration that Donald Trump kept praising Hitler for his generals, and he wished he had generals like that. Stephen Miller, an open, avowed white nationalist, who in the first Trump administration, a white nationalist who used to work at Breitbart, a former white nationalist woman, said that Stephen Miller used to send her white nationalist content to publish and mainstream in Breitbart. If that's not enough, Stephen Miller at the Arizona rally, this propaganda rally for Charlie Kirk, I refuse to call it a memorial, just happened to, again, sound like Nazis when he plagiarized and or was inspired by Goebbels' "The Storm is Coming" speech from 1932. They did a compare and contrast. They're like, oh my God, he is using Goebbels' "The Storm is Coming" speech. In 1933, the Nazis did, allegedly, they created a false flag with the Reichstag fire. Everyone kind of thinks, not everyone, but many historians think they had a hand in burning down the Reichstag, and then they blamed the communists. And they used that as an excuse to declare martial law. Once martial law was declared, game was over. Hitler became what? Dictator. What have you heard in the past month? We need to invoke the Insurrection Act. Stephen Miller has been saying it since the summer. Who else said it? Pam Bondi. Who else said it? Donald Trump. You've heard it here, me and Jared say that if it all goes to hell and it's looking bad, and it looks like they're not going to win in the midterms. They're going to invoke the Insurrection Act and then lead to martial law. Folks, he's negative 31 on the economy, food stamps, and it's gonna run out. And we haven't even talked about the gutting of Medicaid that's going to happen in 2026. It's getting really bad. Democrats, being as weak as they are +9 in a hypothetical advantage. And Mamdani's about to become a winner. And Latinos for Trump have left. Young voters for Trump have left. People are pissed off about Epstein. They're pissed off about America First agenda not being fulfilled. They're pissed off about this war. He's going to go to war with Venezuela. And furthermore, if I may say, Pam Bondi said, what we're doing to these drug smugglers in Venezuela, no evidence they're drug smugglers, we're going to do to these leftists Antifa. What are they doing to them? Blowing them up without due process. It's all in front of you. And then if you want a little bit more evidence, Jared, just in the past 2 weeks, the most rotten trick-or-treat from the heavens on our feet. For those who are doubtful or skeptical about what you and I have talked about for the past 30 minutes. 2,900 pages of Telegram text messages between young Republican leaders in their 30s, openly promoting Nazi white supremacist ideology. Paul Ingrassia, a man who was supposed to be handpicked by Donald Trump to lead a federal watchdog agency, had to resign because a text came out that said he has a Nazi streak. A Republican aide for a Republican congressman has a U.S. flag with a swastika on the flag in Congress because it's totally normal. And then Nick Fuentes, who I've been warning about ever since he dined with Donald Trump 2.5 years ago, has now been publicly embraced by Tucker Carlson and the Heritage Foundation. Jared, that was just top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff.
Oh, we also have a reactionary force, 23,000 guardsmen who are being trained in order to go anywhere in the country at any given moment. And weirdly enough, Waj, they're coming online in 2026. That's odd. That's really odd.
And also speak about ICE. All this Aryan Nazi white supremacist AI generated images that people are saying, oh, this looks like the posters the Nazis used. What am I missing, Jared?
And you know what else is funny about that, Waj? Whether it's the SA or the SS or just the general, Nazi party, as the economy was going to hell in Germany, it became one of the biggest employers. Isn't that strange? Isn't it weird that disaffected white men? And by the way, America had a big giant move towards Nazism. We don't talk about that. Right? America was always against Nazism. We don't talk about the American Nazi Party and the fascists in this country that were, gathering after the Great Depression. So I'll just throw some things out, Waj, and we can just sort of, I don't know, sit with them. Does it seem like this administration is intentionally demolishing this economy? Yes, it is. It absolutely is. We're also sitting on one of the biggest bubbles that we have ever seen in the history of this country. So we're also talking about a product that this bubble rests on that is going to go ahead and basically throw the entire white-collar class out of work. Here's the thing, Waj. We like to think that the Nazis were only supported by a brutish working class that were too stupid to realize they were being lied to. The main driver of the Nazi class was when the white-collar class went to them. That's where things took off. So now all of a sudden, we've taken all of the money that would have went towards social programs, we've thrown it into ICE, which is a secret police, which looks a hell of a lot like the SA and the SS. All of a sudden now, that's going to be one of the main employers in the United States of America, and it's ideologically aligned with Donald Trump and his goals. That's really odd, isn't it?
Six-figure salary, Jared.
It's a 6-figure salary. And by the way, what else do we have in this country? A lack of purpose and meaning. Join it. It's like the old army ads. Be a part of something larger. Be a part of a crusade. What is Nick Fuentes and all of these crypto Nazis saying to young white men? You don't have meaning. You don't have purpose. Be a part of something larger. That's the essence of white supremacy. It gives you meaning and purpose when you don't have any.
And community. It gives you community. It gives you a pathway towards ascension. It gives you a brotherhood, and it gives you a narrative where you're the good guy.
And by the way, every person that I've ever talked to who has either been in the middle of a white nationalist movement or has left it, they were all lonely. They didn't have purpose. Yeah. They needed community. So here's the thing, Waj. I want to say a couple things to bring all this together. One, does Donald Trump understand what he's doing? No, he's an idiot. But he's an instinctual fascist. He feels it. He has the demeanor of a fascist. Everyone always says, oh, he has Hitler's books. He didn't read any of those books. He just had them around because he likes being near dictators and he is inherently a fascist. He's an incredible tool for moving towards fascism and going ahead and destroying all these guardrails. It's people behind him like Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, all of those people. And by the way, the wealth class that is funding all of these plans through their think tanks and institutes, those are serious people. And they are creating and by the way, the tech oligarchs who are like, oh, by the way, we're happy to create a surveillance system. We're happy to help ICE. We're happy to help with all these secret police things. The next part of it is this. Fascism presents us with three choices, Waj. One is fight and be crushed. The second is to lock your door and hope that they don't come for you. And the third is to put the armband on and goose step down Main Street and join in on the spoils. The problem at this point is the United States of America, the fighting against it, it feels more frightening than ever, and it's supposed to keep us from fighting this thing. It's supposed to feel inevitable, and we just need to save ourselves. The second, lock your door and hide from it. You know where I'm seeing that from? Liberals and moderates.
Yep.
The people who should know better, and meanwhile, they're like, well, I don't really want to be crushed. I really don't want to lose things. Go back to Weimar. If people don't understand it, go back and look at the political environment at that time. The only reason this stuff works is because people live in denial. Like you and I have been screaming about this for a decade or more. Those people don't want to admit it. It'll pass. It'll be fine. Maybe Donald Trump will die. Maybe a court will say something, whatever. The third, putting the armband on and doing this, people do not understand that as the economic environment changes, that armband is going to start looking better to a lot of people.
Yep.
And by the way, the crypto Nazis, they're the only ones offering an actual sort of diagnosis of what's going on. And it starts with a kernel of truth. You've been betrayed. Yes, we have. All of a sudden now you're fed a bunch of content, which makes it look better and better to put the armband on. And those three choices are where we sit. And everything you just laid out, Waj, it's not hyperbolic to say, I know where this is going, because they tell us.
Yep.
They tell us constantly where this thing is going. What we're saying is, my God, after all this time, we have to draw a line in the sand because, as I keep saying, we're being herded in somewhere. And there's a gate that will shut at some point. You can't wait for the gate to shut. Because at that point, they have everything. They have all of the levers of control. You have no options at your table. The only thing you have to choose there at that point is dying, locking the door, and denying what's going on, or putting the armband on. And that is not just Nazism and fascism. That is every authoritarian regime we've ever seen.
Chickens for Colonel Sanders, folks. And the chickens voluntarily go into the slaughterhouse, thinking that they're going to be killing the trans and the undocumented and the woke and the DEI, not realizing that they're the ones who are going to be turned into chicken nuggets. And if you don't believe me, I give you the Jewish American voters who voted for Donald Trump, realizing as of yesterday, oh shit. And I'm going to give you the Indian American voters for Donald Trump who realized, wait a second, they're throwing us under the bus. And I'm giving you all those suburban voters of color who thought that, the trans are so gross, and they went for Donald Trump. And I'm giving you all those people who said, you know what, I want to pay less taxes. And I'm giving you for those Latino voters who said, you know what, I don't care about Democrats or Republicans. Donald Trump promises to bring the prices down. He won't deport me. Fascists come for everyone.
Everyone.
Fascists come for everyone. At the end of the day, you can't escape it. And there's a weakness of our institutions. Our institutions are broken. Corporate media is done. It's completely capitulated. It's gone. Universities bending the knee. Big tech is the big tech. To me, are the industrialists of the Nazi era. And if, inshallah, we ever have a Nuremberg trials and any accountability, folks, I want you all to remember that some of these industrialists who went along with it because, hey, why get in the way of good profits? They were tried and convicted for war crimes. Yeah. And I do believe some of these big tech companies will be tried and convicted for war crimes, and we do need accountability. What people don't realize, folks, is, and I do want to talk about this for a second. You mentioned that Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, they're talk loadsome politics. I hope everyone knows where Jared and I are, but they're diagnosing certain things. They're touching upon certain things that the establishment, corporate media, Democratic leadership refuses to talk about. I've been saying this for a while. I'll say it again. You can no longer be a leader resistance. And you can no longer say as a Democrat that you're defending democracy if you support and endorse a genocide abroad.
Exactly.
They, because they're anti-Semitic, but doesn't matter, they see what the wind is blowing and they see a genocide. And you know how they're winning over a lot of folks? A lot of folks. I know, I cannot tell you, Jared, how many Muslims, educated, smart Muslims, have said the following to me. Bro, I know Candace Owens is terrible, but man, on Israel, she's saying stuff that Democrats don't even say. Have you heard of this Nick Fuentes? I've never heard of this man, but he was so eloquent in his defense of Palestinian rights. I'm like, he's a Nazi. No, he's really? They're winning people over on America First in the sense that why are we endorsing and supporting this genocide? Folks, it's a Gaza generation. Globally, young people have been radicalized on this. And you see Chuck Schumer, as of October 31st, still not endorse Mamdani, and in the summer, take a photo with war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. All right, so that's number one, a litmus test. I'm telling you, folks, Israel, Palestine, Tucker Carlson's not stupid. Marjorie Taylor Greene's not stupid. Thomas Massey's not stupid. They're doing capture. They're capturing moderates, independents, some liberals, and some people think the entire establishment is corrupt. And people have the friggin' memory of gnats. They forget. I'm telling you, Muslims have forgotten. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's really come around. I'm like, she's horrible. She goes, did you see what she said about Israel and against the empire? I don't know. Okay, these are my own people who are forgetting. So think about like your average white guy who's not that much into it and who's completely lost, right? So Israel, Palestine. Another issue, and perhaps the one I put right above Israel, Palestine, what they're talking about, and Marjorie Taylor Greene sees where the wind is blowing. Anti-establishment. Anti-establishment. That's how Donald Trump came into power. I am a bulldozer. I'm not part of the establishment. It's all bullshit. He is the establishment. But nonetheless, you need an outsider to clean up the corrupt system, right? That's what Hitler said. Establishment is corrupt. So the anti-establishment, anti-broligarchy message is the one that will unite people. So you see them on the anti-establishment. You see them on Israel, Palestine, America First. And then the last one I'll say is Epstein. Look at them. They're smart. Who is saying release the Epstein files? Charlie Kirk before he died? Nick Fuentes? Tucker Carlson? Thomas Massey? Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I think the fourth is class. What has happened here? Because, and I'm, again, Waj, this is one of the reasons I love talking with you. You just nailed it dead to rights. Because what has happened in this country, and I want to turn like the angle of this a little bit, where the failure of the Democratic Party has come has their inability to break from the status quo and diagnose the things that they've done. Like one of the reasons why Donald Trump was ever able to gain purchase, and this is why Bernie Sanders gained purchase in 2016 too, was because the Democratic Party didn't want to deal with what the Clinton administration had done in the 1990s with globalism. They didn't want to deal with what happened in the aftermath of the 2008 collapse and the fact that the Obama administration didn't go after the bankers who caused the problem. They also don't want to deal with the fact that why you brought up the industrialist of the 21st century, which are the tech oligarchs, and they are exactly on the same parallels as the 20th century industrialists. Why do they have the money they have? Why do they have the influence they have? Because the Democratic Party of the early 21st century didn't want to regulate them. They were making too much money. They were creating the new economy. Why would you get in the way of that? So if you don't talk about that, what do you open the door for? And I knew it the moment that I saw my first interview with Steve Bannon. And he said, the wealthy in this country have screwed over the common person. And I was like, oh shit, this is a problem. Because he correctly diagnosed the issue. The Democrats didn't want to do that. They still don't. If you hear the Democrats, it's about means testing. No, we want to make things good over here for a small business owner that works in this community or does whatever. They don't want to admit they're wrong. Donald Trump's original appeal was saying, hey, the Democrats are full of shit. The Republicans are full of shit too. The magic moment was when he said George W. Bush was wrong for the Iraq War. And immediately it was like, oh my God, somebody's finally talking about this. The Democrats, when it came to Gaza, they helped carry out a genocide. They don't want to say it. They don't want to deal with it. They continue to hang out with Benjamin Netanyahu for a variety of different reasons. They don't want to admit where they've gone wrong. And you read one report after another. This absolute asinine one came out the other day. It's called Decide to Win. And of course, it's the usual guys, Waj. It's Axelford. It's, they brought in Nate Silver for good measure. They brought in David Plouffe. And wouldn't you know that the Democratic Party needs to move towards the right? They need to move away from
Oh, I
gay.
read that. I read that.
They need to do this. They need to reach out to the same voters that Donald Trump had, white men. And what does this reflect, Waj? It reflects that each time that fascism happens, it's because the intractable problems of a society aren't being dealt with by the people who need to deal with them. So extremists come out, they tell you what's going on, and then they give you a solution that is self-destructive but alluring because certain people have prejudices. Because they have inherent prejudices from their communities. And they say, yeah, maybe it is the black people, maybe it is the gay and the trans people, maybe it is the Muslims, whatever it is. The whole issue here is that the Democratic Party doesn't want to admit there's a problem. The leadership, they are cowards. They are paid and fed by the same people who have created these problems, and they just want to conserve what's going on. They've become a conservative party. And when the Overton window moves towards the right, the liberals, the moderates, they become conservative, and people want change. And so the only people calling for change at this point are extremists. That's the issue here, and they're gaining power and purchase.
And I think people aren't real. And folks, people say, well, why are you so critical against the Democrats? Vote blue no matter who. I disagree. Because even the Democrats don't back the blue no matter who. I give you Zoran Mamdani. Like, they spent $20 million trying to find the liberal Joe Rogan. And then there's this guy, the state assemblyman, does a grassroots campaign. I interviewed him like 7 months ago when he was a distant number 2. He's like, well, I'll just show you. Here's a message of affordability. Here's a message of us versus the oligarchy. Here's a message of taking on the 1%. Here's a message of not leaving anyone behind or throwing the woke under the bus. Here's me being creative, joyful, leaning in to wokeness, knocking on doors, trying to win over folks. And now there are people who said they voted for Donald Trump saying, he failed me. I like this Mamdani guy. The Democratic Socialist? Why not? Let's give it a shot. I don't give a shit. Democrats haven't done anything for me. Republicans haven't done anything for me. Let's give it to this Democratic Socialist.
And by the way, his opponents, Wash, you have a guy who avoided federal charges for taking bribes from Turkey, and a disgraced governor who has been accused of God knows how many, I don't
like
exactly
a dozen?
say, and who knows how many elderly people he killed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what's the extreme position that Mamdani has, Waj? He wants free public transit. Oh my God, can you imagine? Oh my God, the Socialist Republic of New York City that might have free public transit, that they can't even get to him. That's exactly right.
And that's why we're at a problem, folks. Yes. That's why we're in a problem. And that's why I keep telling y'all, this Democratic leadership, it isn't built for this fight. It's not made for this moment. And, people said Schumer. I've been saying Schumer and Jeffries. I'll also take it a step further. Gavin Newsom. I know everyone chooses him as his fighter. Why he's problematic, and let's see, things can change, is because he is unwilling to change on Israel-Palestine. You see him trip up. You saw Cory Booker trip up. You saw Pete Buttigieg trip up just recently, right? When Van Lathan interviewed him about taking money from AIPAC, he goes, that's interesting. It's interesting that you keep bringing it up. That's interesting. It's interesting. And I had a conversation with Van on Francesca's show, and me and Francesca were like, you do realize he was insinuating you're anti-Semitic. And he goes, bro, when I was talking to him, I was genuinely sincere. Like, what's so interesting about my question? I thought he was generally thought it was interesting, right? So he stumbled on that issue. He has not gone against the oligarchy, and he flip-flops. He throws the woke under the bus. I do not think he's your fighter. I think Democrats like that are not your fighter. People want someone who is an outsider, someone who brings something different, someone who's willing to fight, someone who's promising reform instead of restoration. And look, Mamdani is just a beautiful test case of everything that we've just said, Jared. He just hit 50%. The people are telling you, we don't give a shit that he's Democratic Socialist. We like him because you know what? Yeah, why shouldn't we have free buses? And why shouldn't New York be affordable? And why are there billionaires? And he's reflecting my righteous rage. And I like his positive message. And he doesn't throw anyone under the bus. I'll give him a shot. And Democrats are like, we will do everything in our power to destroy this man who is a generational talent like AOC and like Obama. Bloomberg just came out and is giving millions of dollars to Cuomo. Bloomberg, they brought out Bill Clinton. They brought out Clyburn before he flipped. They used the New York Times, Larry Summers. Folks, what more do you need to see? It is October 31st. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democratic Party, has still not endorsed Mamdani. Jared.
I mean, and just to go, first of all, so many things there, and you're dead right. First of all, Gavin Newsom doesn't deserve anyone's support. The only thing that he does for people is makes them feel good because he trolls people. The moment that he threw trans people under the bus, I was like, I'm never going to vote for this person. I don't care if he ever wins a primary. I don't care. I'm not doing it because this is the moment for moral leadership. And that's what the failure. It's not that the Democrats need a Joe Rogan. It's that they need the courage of principles. The issue is when a Newsom or Buttigieg does this. I thought this was the problem with Kamala Harris. They don't speak from the gut. And the issue is that they're lost in an old politics of PR. That's all it is, because they have to figure out they have to do this testing over here and they have to do this testing over here. Meanwhile, Waj, have you noticed that the Democratic Party, the only answers that they ever have is moving towards the right and deregulation? And why? Because the people who come up with these platforms, who do they work for when they're not on a Democratic campaign, Waj?
Oh, yeah, corporations.
Oh, isn't that weird that they like summer with Uber and then they go over and they campaign over here and they want to help Uber and they actually get paid more by those corporations? It's very odd how that happens. And the entire point, and history tells us this, when fascism shows up, the moderates and a large portion of white liberals, they side with the fascists. And why, Waj? Because they're more afraid of leftists who want to reform things because it attacks their bottom line. The Democratic Party at this point can't do anything with the people who are in charge because they are all cozy and in bed with the people who are causing this problem in the first place. They will side with the fascist every time, and they'll give you the illusion of leadership. I actually, to be honest with you, this is going to be controversial. I really appreciate that the Democratic Party isn't putting up much of a fight because it makes it obvious what the problem is. It makes it obvious where the game board sits and who is on what side and how they do this. I do think the thing with Mamdani shows us something. It shows us what the people actually want. And if you actually look at the polls, the vast majority and consensus of this country agrees on what needs to happen. 60 to 80% on every issue. It is only what's represented by a corporate-controlled Democratic Party and a fascist-run, wealth and oligarchical-controlled GOP. And you brought up the corporate media. No one watches it anymore because they know it's bought and paid for too.
There you go.
Even hearing what it is that we actually think, it's gotten to the point of intractability. You can't even live in denial of it anymore unless your bottom line depends on it.
And they want restoration. Biden for them was restoration. And what I me and Danielle have said, it's time for reformation. And that makes people deeply uncomfortable.
Yes.
And by people, I mean the wealthy. And they're like, I would much rather side with this fascist or neo-fascist that makes me comfortable and shares my economic values than actually roll the dice with this flaming liberal who wants to increase my taxes, which is why corporations and the industrialists have always laid out the red carpet for fascists, whether it was in Italy, whether it's in Hungary, whether it was with Germany, whether it's in the United States of America right now. Literally, folks, they have given Donald Trump bribe money. CBS, ABC, NBC, YouTube. He's collected $90 million from them, where they could have litigated, but they chose just to bribe him. Universities bending the knee. Literally, you have Tim Apple giving him a 24-karat apple, right? You have, who was in the front row? I always want you, when the history books, inshallah, when there's our own version of the trials and there's accountability and there's the history books, I've always kept this image in my head. Donald Trump's inauguration, who was in the front row? Who was in the front row? All the tech bros. All the tech bros were in the front row. And folks, the reason, if you are like, the Mamdani, the AOCs, it's too much. I want you all just to think about the alternative. Things are going to get far worse in this country. Life expectancy has been shortened. The economy is in shambles. There's going to be a burst. The AI burst is probably going to come before the crypto burst. Too many billionaires and now too many financial institutions are in crypto. Jamie Dimon just said, remember that 2 days ago? It was a big tell. I was skeptical about crypto and Bitcoin, but now it's legit, which means when the bubble's going to burst, and it will, they'll be too big to fail. So who's going to bail them out? Us. It's all happening, right? Wages are flat. UPS just got rid of 35,000 people. Amazon got rid of 35,000 people. You're going to get all this replacement with robots and AI. The dollar has fell down due to this trade war and tariffs, which are taxes. Prices have gone up. Education systems being dismantled. People will be poor. People will be sick. People will be hungry. Oh, there's a whole bunch of private prisons. They need to be fed. How are they fed? With human bodies? People are going to go to prison. Things are going to get worse. America's getting more isolated. As diseases increase in America, such as measles and polio, you know what other countries are going to do? We don't want you dirty ass Americans bringing measles and polio. The world is already shifting. Canada's saying, all right, we're going to go to China. China says, all right, dumbasses, you want to do tariffs on us? We're not going to buy from soy farmers. We'll just go to Argentina. Soy farmers are about to kill themselves. There's going to be more suicides. There's going to be more examples of radicalized violence because it's a country of guns. As this happens, folks, and you elect your moderate Democrat and you elect your Gavin Newsom, you think, aha, it's over. Trump is dead. We can go back to normalcy. And Gavin Newsom is going to be friends with the oligarchy and friend with the moderates and friend with all the Republicans. And he's going to try to have restoration. He'll try to buddy with Netanyahu. It'll be a stopgap. It'll be a stopgap. And as everything gets worse, a Nick Fuentes will rise up and say, see, it's them. They, the establishment. Choose me. Join something better. Join something greater. Join this America First movement. Come to me. And that stopgap that make you all feel comfortable, I'm talking about you moderates and you wealthy and you libs who refuse to embrace or listen to what Mamdani and AOC are cooking, you're going to lose. And something worse is going to come up, and that's what happened in Nazi Germany. Am I wrong, Jared? If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, Wad. Say, Wad, you're wrong.
You're exactly right. And I listen, I'm old. I've got a lot more gray and white in my beard, but I haven't forgotten what happened in 2021. The Republicans' fever was going to break, Wash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Joe Biden thought that he was going to be able to reach across the aisle and make everything better. Joe Biden was a stopgap measure. And what did he actually accomplish? He was able to inject capital into the market when he was allowed to by the corporate overlords who own Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. That was it. There has to be something different. And I want to say right now, everything you just brought up, you're even taking it for granted that we'll have elections, that we'll be able to get to a stopgap for a while. We don't know that. And what that means is that you and I and the people watching this that it resonates with, we have to stop waiting on someone to show up and save us. The cavalry's not coming. The Savior's not coming. A Messiah is not coming. We have to fight for this thing. And it's frightening. You just brought up that America is going to get worse. It's 100% true. The reason why people don't always fight for change is scary. Change is very uncomfortable. You don't know where this thing is going to go. I'm not promising anyone a utopia, but you have to be willing to risk it. And the people who need to risk it in the political and journalist class, the system has served them. Most of them are Nepo babies. Most of them grew up in extremely wealthy, affluent families. They don't want to risk anything. They would much rather conserve it. They would much rather have the thing given to them. They want to go back to 2015. Guess what? You don't get to 2016 if 2015 was okay. This is going to continue to get worse if the material conditions aren't actually answered. And the Democratic Party, as constituted, isn't going to do it. We have to expect better, and we have to fight for something else.
And I'll say this, I'm not saying if you don't like the Bernies or the Mamdanis or the AOCs or even the Trumps, just step back real quick and do a very calm diagnosis. Why are they resonating? Even the Graham Plattner, why is he plus, why was he plus 30, even though I think he's a very troubling candidate? Just look at what he's saying. Anti-establishment, fighter, the system is broken. We need reformation, not restoration, affordability, go against the oligarchy, go against the 1%, regulate, have the rich pay their taxes, help the workers, don't throw anyone under the bus. That's it. That's why you had in 2024, literally, New Yorkers vote for Donald Trump for president and AOC for the House. And the establishment, which is our corporate institutions, our corporate media, And furthermore, I know people don't like hearing this, the Democratic leadership refuses to confront the reality and refuses to bear hug a winning message.
Yep.
Mamdani literally, it's there. It's there. But in order to embrace that, they have to stop sucking at the teat of the oligarchy, and they got to stop sucking at the teat of Netanyahu and AIPAC. And you saw Chuck Schumer, and they're unwilling to do that. They want to drink from that teat forever. And by the way, that's our milk they want to drink from, right? I drink your milkshake. I drink it all up. And that's why when George Carlin said it's a big club and you ain't in it, and you're seeing it in real time, folks. Jared, final question to you. People said, what's the hope here? What can we do?
I mean, the hope is that we're having this conversation. I haven't had so many conversations about class politics and class war my entire life. And it's because it's become obvious, which is why fascism has to happen. Fascism happens whenever they can't hide the contradictions anymore. They can't hide the anti-democratic aspects of it. Everyone knows that this is a rigged game at this point. The question is whether or not the paradigm changes because we want it to change, or whether or not democracy changes and goes away. So there's always, and that's the frightening thing about this, as the danger escalates, the resistance escalates. And then the question is, which one wins out? And what we've talked about historically is where, the moderates and the people who don't want to deal with the actual thing, where they don't come around, and where the people don't necessarily come around, and then things get worse. The hope is that things are falling apart, which means that we are free to make something better and different. We just have to make it happen.
Yeah, we need reformation, folks. And I don't think the answer... I know the answer is not coming from the top. And so when you see No Kings Rally, when you see the Visibility Brigade at the overpasses, when you're seeing people call for economic boycotts, when you're seeing these ad hoc movements, it's all ad hoc right now because there's no democratic leadership, folks. I know people don't like hearing this. I've been saying it for a while. There's a civil war in the Democratic Party. No one's admitting it. Internally, many of these elected officials, they don't support Schumer, Jeffries. They look at all the numbers. So what you're seeing is ad hoc. Jasmine Crockett does something, Ro Khanna does something, AOC does something, Mamdani's doing something, Bernie's doing something, Talarico's doing something. Eventually, inshallah, it'll coalesce, but it'll coalesce from them looking at what the people want. The people are now leading it, right? Which is why you're seeing for the first time in my lifetime, Seth Moulton came out and said, I'm not going to take AIPAC money. What? Ro Khanna, I had him on. I said, Ro, you got to call it a genocide. We went back and forth. Now Ro Khanna calls it a genocide, right? You're seeing what's happening with the Palestinians in Israel. You're seeing the anti-oligarchy message. You saw the Democratic Party, folks. I've been keeping track of this. If I may, real quick. After Donald Trump last year did his State of the Early Union bullshit address, you know who the Democratic Party chose to be the representative? Alyssa Slotkin. Moderate, centrist Alyssa Slotkin. She was chosen as the face and the future of the Democratic Party. The only thing I remember from her speech was she praised Reagan. And then the only thing I remember is that she said she has a war plan and we're not going to be weak and we're going to have the goddamn alpha energy of Lions coach Dan Campbell and we're not going to be woke. All right? I'm not making this up, folks. Check it out. And, even though she is friggin' former CIA, highly educated, I think went to Ivy League University in the East Coast. I don't know about New York. I am a simple, just a podunk girl, right? You're asking me to endorse Mamdani. I don't follow New York politics, right? Who does Alyssa Slotkin inspire? Who has his... Folks, that's who the Democratic Party wants you to endorse. Alyssa Slotkin, right? Meanwhile, the Democratic base is like, we like this Mamdani guy. And Plattner, even though he's like really flawed, his before all the stuff came out, this oyster fisherman that we don't know about, his platform, anti-oligarchy, anti-genocide, anti-billionaires, help the people, right? Reformation. So we have to push the Democrats to completely reform their agenda, new leadership, grassroots resistance. And I will say this, folks, the religion of America is capitalism. The religious holiday of America is Black Friday. You can make these companies hurt. Indivisible, I was talking to the co-founder of Indivisible, Ezra Klein, 2 weeks ago, Jared, and he told me about ICE and YouTube and YouTube and Spotify and all these companies promoting ICE propaganda and ICE messages. And I'm like, this friggin' boycotts Spotify. And so I said cancel Spotify, and then Indivisible, I think as of a couple of days ago, has done an official cancel Spotify uh, 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 boycott. Cancel and unsubscribe to Spotify, folks. Choose one example and make it hurt. And you're like, watch, that won't work. Jimmy Kimmel's back on air because 1.7 million people unsubscribed from Disney, and Disney caved, and Sinclair caved, and now the shareholders are asking Disney, who made a decision to throw Kimmel under the bus? These people worship money, Jared. I always tell people the one way you can get them is the color green still trumps the color white. They love money, and we have wallets. And if we take away our money from them, they bend the knee. We saw that happen. So just giving you all some hope there. Jared, final word to you.
I'll just say, when it comes to boycotts, they are successful, but it also needs to make something else obvious, which is it's not just our money, it's our labor.
That's right.
And
Ezra 11. Sorry, JV. Ezra 11. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Ezra. I was going to say, man, that'd be a bad situation if Ezra Klein was in charge of Indivisible.
Thank you.
Yeah, it should prove to us that the power is actually with us. The only reason that fascism works is because it creates the illusion of inevitability, that we have to go along with it. And the Democratic Party helps with that, unfortunately. We, as democratic, small d, democratic powered people, we can change this and we can fight against it. But it has to be, we have to be willing to sacrifice sometimes. It means not doing a Black Friday sale. It means maybe putting your job and your livelihood on the line, because, going back to what you said, they come for everybody. And you have to take action before they get to everybody, period.
I kept Jared longer than I wanted to, and had a feeling that I could rap with someone about this who's a nerd and a masochist and does a deep dive. But this is what we do. Midnight Kingdom is his book that you have to read. Dispatches from a Collapsing State is his Substack. And how else can people find you and support you, Jared?
I'm over at Blue Sky, JY Sexton, all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. This will be up on our Substack later today. I have Dean Obey the Law at 2:30. I really recommend people tuning into that, because Dean and I have been going through this Islamophobia our entire lives. He's in New York, and he's doing the Arab American Comedy Festival, and he's a great political commentator. And the Islamophobia and the Islamophobic attacks against Mamdani. Folks, you think the war on terror, you think you're done with the war on terror? The war on terror ain't done with you. ICE was created after the war on terror. So was the Patriot Act. So we're going to talk about all that at 2:30. And also at 3 o'clock, I got the actor Ben McKenzie, who actually has been on the crypto grift for years. He wrote a book, and now he has a documentary about the crypto grift. He's really smart on this. I'm telling you, folks. Ben McKenzie's on at 3. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a conversation about the white refugees that are coming. Do you know about these white refugees, these poor South African farmers, Jared? Oh, who think about the poor white African farmers, won't you?
It's that we're a nation of immigrants when we want to be, isn't it?
Yeah, when do we want to be? Folks, thank you all for watching. Be kind. Subscribe to Jared. Become a paid subscriber to Jared. If you have a few dollars left over, become a paid subscriber. If not, everything is for free. I have no paywalls. It's a left hook. Be informed, be kind, spend time with your families, trick or treat, enjoy the candy, and whatever you do, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, Jared.
I watch.